again, everybody. Welcome back to the show. This is Back to the Window with Scott and Scott. I am your host, Scott Steehn, lead handicapper at winnersandwhiners.com.
And I'm your co-host, Scott Reichel, senior handicapper over winnersandwhiners.com.
And together we do this each and every day, 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, as we try to guide everybody and help them in their journey to head back to the window to cash those winning tickets. Well, Scott, you ventured into the city last night to see your beloved Nets play. How'd that go for you?
Well, it was a competitive game, so I had that going for me. But I saw a friend of mine who I hadn't seen in about a year, which was nice. Besides that, yeah, my team lost. Not surprised. Absolutely crushed NBA yesterday, though, so I made a lot of money, which definitely helps. But yeah, it wasn't fun to watch my team get its ass kicked again.
Brutal. Just absolutely brutal. Where do the Nets go from here, Scott?
Cancun.
Okay.
Vacation.
Very good.
Hanging out with the family. I don't know. Something.
All right. I kind of meant in a professional standpoint from the organization, but sure. Let's go.
I knew what you meant. I have no idea. There's so much flexibility going on because of all the potential trade exemptions they have. They also have a couple of upcoming free agents with Claxton, with Brown. I don't know what they're going to do with them. Besides that, I don't know what the story is with Simmons. So that's a whole separate can of worms that I'm not going to go down into right now. But the point is, yeah, it's definitely an interesting time. Kyrie's a free agent too because he's going to opt out. So there's a lot of question marks. But Durant's going to stay, and apparently he wants Steve Nash to stay. So we'll go from there. I don't know.
All right, very good. Tim Earl in the house. What up, Timmy? Timmy's stopping by the show. He was at my last stop too when I was just coming over from Just Parlays with Chris King. So I hope you guys had a chance to catch that. Had a talk a little NFL draft up top. And you ready for the draft, bud?
Ready is, I don't really know how to put that because, yeah, I guess I'm technically ready. I haven't been as involved in NFL props for the draft as I usually have been. But I've also been looking for potential middles on some actual legitimate sports books.
Right.
And they don't really exist in New York. New York's really been slacking with the draft. So there's a couple of offshore spots that might have something. Maybe I'll check the locals, but for the most part, no, I'm kind of limited when it comes to draft stuff. But it's also not exactly a star-packed draft, so to speak, because the quarterbacks are relatively underwhelming.
Right. Yeah, I was telling you last night I was able to stake out a middle position on a couple of books with Malik Willis over 10.5, under 12.5. So I've got him 11 and 12. Which is the Minnesota Vikings spot, and it's also the who the hell? It's not the Saints, it's not the Steelers. Give me another team that needs a quarterback, Scott.
I don't know. Half the league needs a quarterback.
Yeah, it's the anyway. Okay, so anyway, I liked that's
Seahawks.
No, I even texted it to you who it was.
You said 12 or 13?
No, 11 or 12.
11 or 12 is the Commanders.
The Commanders, Washington. Yeah, somebody that needs a quarterback. They've got a placeholder there now. You don't think Wentz is their guy, do you?
No. I still cannot believe they absorbed the majority, if not all of that salary and gave draft picks away to Indy. That makes absolutely no sense.
Roland says, I'm not taking any stock in the draft here in Detroit. Doesn't matter who they pick. The fans in the media will be hating on the picks. Yeah, I get that.
The best pick he made recently was an offensive lineman.
Well,
it wasn't a sexy pick, but Sewell has been very good so far.
I think they're going to get Hutchinson, so that'll be nice.
They should be. We can talk about the whole sudden rise for the number 1 overall pick. I don't get it. I don't get what the hype is. He had a great combine.
Right.
And at Georgia, he didn't do much statistically.
Nope.
It's a perfect pick for Jacksonville to make just because you know that their player development is absolute garbage and he's going to be a bust.
Okay.
Just saying, I feel like a lot of the bust or boom prospect part of it is where you land because a lot of player development, I'd say personnel in the league are relatively underwhelming. But the Jaguars taking a reach on some upside defensive end dash linebacker does seem like it might backfire pretty dramatically, doesn't it? The framework is there.
Yep. Now we've got 2 Detroit fans, I would assume here. IC and Roland. IC says, I really hope they don't draft Hutchinson. Roland says, I love Hutchinson. He played for my favorite team, the U of M.
I
So,
think Hutchinson's a steady defensive lineman. I'm
yep.
not sure if he's athletic as a Bosa, for example, or a Watt, but he's good. I think he'll be consistent. I just feel like you're talking about a situation where you have this sudden riser who's suddenly going to be the number one overall pick, but then why didn't he produce in college?
Well, there's a lot of theories about that, about the defense that he played in. And, if you play, because he's really playing the 4-eye spot, which is like the inside the tackle. So it doesn't give you a ton of opportunity. You're basically just eating blockers. You're eating double teams is what you're doing. It doesn't give you that much of a chance to shine. They think that, they move him around a lot. And that's one of the things they like about him. The fact that they can move him around. Hutchinson's pretty much locked to his one spot. So
Yeah. But I feel like Hutchinson's closer to being a finished project.
No question. Finished
than
product,
the
yep.
Georgia kid. And as I mentioned before, I think you'd agree. Do you trust Jacksonville's player development personnel? Because I don't.
No, we haven't seen anything yet in the last few years that would indicate they have any kind of competent player development situation there.
So I'll take the finished product.
Okay. Fair enough. Don't forget to like and subscribe, everybody. This is our spot up top where we definitely implore you to click that thumb, hit that like button, and make sure you subscribe to the Winners and Whiners YouTube channel and the Max Wagers Network YouTube channel, where eventually all of our content is going to be, especially our live shows. So make sure you check that out. As well, check out our friends over there at DraftKings doing a cool promotion for Major League Baseball. Bet $5 on any money line game. If you win it, you receive an extra $200 bump there in free bets. Scott, that's a hell of a deal. Of course, it's only available in states where DraftKings is available. Make sure you check your local listings. Must be 21 to play, except in New Hampshire and Wyoming. We do have the code and the link in the show description, so make sure you check that out as well. Scott, what are going on with Caesars?
Oh, for Caesars, they still have the risk-free bet up to $1,100. So if you place a first-time bet up to $1,100 and it loses, you get the entire amount back in the form of a free bet. So consider it insurance on your initial wager.
Okay, that's kind of exactly what that is. David Good looking for Nerfies. Looking for Nerfies tonight, buddy. Miami, Washington, I think is a good landing spot for a Nerfie. Seattle, Tampa Bay, also a good landing spot for a Nerfie. Baltimore Yankees, don't hate that one. Scott, what else you got?
Well, I was going to say Baltimore Yankees. You got Lyles on the mound, which is concerning, but the Yankees, shout out to them, by the way, they finally scored another run in the first inning over the weekend. It happened once. They've scored twice in the first inning, both of them 2-run homers by Rizzo.
Very nice.
That's the only run they've had in the first inning is just 2 separate home runs by Rizzo. So they're still not doing much offensively. Severino's been good. We know the Orioles are not a good offensive team, but they were okay against the Angels over the weekend. The Angels pitching we know is not very good, but to go down the line, I didn't do enough research on the actual weather, so I'm going to have to take a quick look at that. But just based on the actual pitching matchups here, I don't mind the A's and the Giants. It's going to be a decent amount of juice, but Jeffries has been pretty good, and Rodon we know is very good. But I definitely see a couple of scoreless innings to start there. Also, don't mind Sandoval against McKenzie in that Guardians and Angels matchup. Both those pitchers have been pretty good up to this point. I think you might see no run first inning there, too.
If you like a Yerfie, I'm going to talk to you about the Kansas City Royals and the Chicago White Sox as Lynch goes against Keuchel. We've made a lot about how bad Keuchel has been, but Daniel Lynch has been no party either for the Royals. So
Lynch is a righty or a lefty?
Lefty.
That's what I thought. Yes, he got the White Sox against the lefty.
Yep. You got the White Sox against the lefty there. Something has to give. White Sox lost 7 straight. Royals have lost 4 straight. So
I said I didn't like this White Sox team. La Russa is wearing out his welcome a little bit early, don't you think?
You ready to fire him?
No, it's way too early for that.
No,
it's not Bob Melvin.
Okay.
Yeah, come on.
All right.
But I am curious if they're hovering around 500 at around the All-Star break. And you're in an awful division. The AL Central's gotten better, but it's still not very good in the grand scheme of things.
Nope.
Do you fire La Russa around the All-Star break if you're around 500?
Nope. You sure don't.
You think you just let it ride?
Yep, because for starters, I think 500 is going to be competitive in that division at the All-Star break. So I don't think you're out of anything. If you're 500 in the NL West, maybe you need to make a change. If you're 500 in the AL Central, you're probably 5 games back or less.
That was my favorite bet in the AL Central. Got the under wins on the White Sox. So far, so good.
It was ridiculous. What was it? 92, 93? Where was it?
92.5.
Yeah, there you go.
They only won like 92 last year, and I figured that the pitching staff doesn't really look as good as it did last year.
Mm-hmm.
The rotation's been a mess up to this point. Keuchel's been even worse than we thought he was going to be.
Yep.
And the lineup has been good, but a little bit streaky.
And injuries.
And injuries haven't helped. I know Jimenez got injured. I don't know how long he's going to be out for, but yeah, 92.5 for a team that kind of puts it on autopilot every now and then and doesn't really seem to be fully invested in actually winning a bunch of games in the regular season. I question the actual focus of that team under La Russa for the entire season. And so far, it looks like they're not that focused.
Agreed. Lex Steele likes the Rockies' first 5 and full game behind German Marquez.
Okay.
Going up against Zach Eflin.
I think I'm going to stay away because Marquez has always been a pretty jarring home road splits guy.
Yep.
Very good in cores, awful everywhere else.
Yep. We just talked about that on Chris's show, the fact that he's a master of cores, which is a weird thing. But, yeah.
And I had a good read on that game yesterday. I said I like the Phillies team total over. They got to Freeland early. They got to the bullpen often, and they scored, I believe it was 8 runs in that game.
Yeah, I think that 8-2 is where that ended.
I think so. It was either 8-2 or 10-2. They scored a lot of runs, so that's all that matters. But I think I'm going to actually lean to the over in this one. I like Marquez, but I got to look at the home road splits, and Eflin I think is okay. 8's a little bit short. I know, once again, it's pretty tough to take overs in today's baseball, but there's a lot of groundwork there to take an over.
Yep, there is. All right, let's find out what happened yesterday, Scott. Let's take a look at yesterday's winners and yesterday's whiners. You know who you are. There were some good picks, there were some bad picks, and there were some bad beats indeed. Let's find out which camp you are in as we reveal the Tuesday edition of Call the Cops. All right, very good. Hey, all right, let's take a look in the NBA, Scott. I don't know if you were familiar with this game or not, but if you had the Nets team total under 110.5 going up against Boston, Brooklyn just needed to score less than 33 points in the fourth quarter. That shouldn't be hard. They had been pretty much underwhelming the entire game, but Durant, never say die with this guy, Scott. He's a gamer. He's still out there gaming with 3.4 seconds left. He nailed a three-pointer. And the Nets, they finished with 112. Sorry, guys, if you had the team total under, so close, but call the cops.
And sticking with a New York team, if you had the Mets and Cardinals under 6.5 or the Cardinals money line in this game, you had 2 runs in the first 8 innings. Cardinals were up 2-0. Mets had 2 outs, and then, well, the rally happened because the Mets scored 5 runs in the top of the 9th, and the game ended 5-2. That totals 7. That is rough.
2 outs, 2 strikes, ground ball to third.
Error.
Arenado cannot handle it. Can't really. He's going
Arenado, more like Arenado.
Am I right?
Tip your waitress, people.
He can't get the ball out of his glove in a timely fashion. He has to throw off balance and sailed it over the first baseman's head. And that was it. That was pretty much all she wrote, Scott. That was just made it 2-1, but Gallegos just fell apart after that.
I think the Mets got the next 5 guys on base. It was really just a bullpen implosion.
Yep, it was awful. Gallegos just couldn't get that third strike. 0-2 count, 2 outs with a two-run lead. Can't get home.
5 runs on the top of the 9th.
Brutal.
That's rough.
Brutal. Hey, if you had the Giants team total under 2.5 against the Brewers, they had 0 runs in the first 2 innings, and then they said, hey.
First 7 innings.
First 7 innings. What did I say? 2? Yeah, first 7 innings. Sorry. Giants scored 2 in the 8th, 2 in the 9th. The game ends up 4-2. Congratulations if you had the Giants team total under 2.5. Call the Caps.
Think the Brewers are ever going to start scoring runs?
Not this year.
I leaned to the Giants yesterday solely based on the travel spot and the fact the Brewers couldn't score. I don't even know if it was travel related. The Brewers' offense was just awful. And then the bullpen, which was so taxed for being used for pretty much the entirety of that Philly series, just ran out of gas.
Yeah, they pretty much used up Hader. And That's what you got to worry about with him. So there was some good news out there. These are the people that had it right. They had it capped correctly. No bout a doubt it, as I used to say when I was young. Scott, you know who you were. You had those nice, easy plays, and you were sitting in the rocking chair.
So, first one, if you ended up having the Raptors plus 8.5 against the 76ers, I know we ended up liking the Raptors plus the 8.5. They led by 13 at the half, and they won by 15. We're going to get back to that game in a little bit because I think we have to have a discussion about it.
Okay, good enough. Hey, if you had the Mavericks -3 against the Jazz, no problemo. They had led by 16 at halftime, and they kept their foot on the gas pedal. They ended up winning by 25. Congratulations to the Mavs.
That was my play of the day. I think Utah shot 3 for 30 from the three-point line last night. It was not pretty.
Brutal.
And that's going to segue us into the third one, because if you had the under in that game between the Jazz and the Mavericks at 212, you had 88 points in the first half. Utah scored less than 40 in the first half, and the game landed 179. Utah did not even get to 80.
Yikes.
Rough.
Not good at all. All right, well, we're going to talk about this, Scott, because we could have put this in so many places. We could have put it in I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. We could have put it in the gambling hero of the day for the other team. But I think it probably fits best here. The odds makers, they usually do a pretty good job, but sometimes you got to wonder, are you guys drinking a little bit? Because when it comes to this series, the odds makers, whoo, baby, they were drunk. I will definitely let you have the honor with this one, sir.
So, just to, mention something I mentioned previously, the Nets initially opened up as a favorite over Boston on one particular book. I think it might have been a couple, but I know one book went rogue. Not going to mention them because they might be a sponsor of the show. But anyway, the Nets were the favorites in one of these books, and they got absolutely pounded because Boston was definitely the play that a lot of people, public sharps, loved for that series. And the Nets went from being the favorites to being swept. So, yeah, if you laid money with the Nets, I don't know what you were thinking, but if you got plus money with the Celtics, it does not get much easier than that because they did not lose a game.
It was a really weird series, Scott. We talked about that yesterday, and this is the reason that I took the Nets, because all three games had been relatively close. There was two of them at 7, one of them at 1. Last night ended at 5. So I don't know that I've seen a series like that where every game has been competitive, but yet you kind of felt watching them like one team really didn't have much of a chance. It was just kind of,
well, the Nets never led. It was a wire-to-wire job, so they kept it somewhat close. But when you're never actually tied after the 0-0 starting score, I don't exactly consider that to be a relatively close game. I know it was one possession late. Durant missed the free throw. There's a lot of stuff going on there. But the fact that the Nets were favored on one particular book is absurd. And that tells you once again that even though odds makers usually know what they're doing, occasionally they fall asleep at the wheel.
Yep, absolutely correct. Sometimes the loss mitigation department just takes a powder, takes a little or a bit of an early lunch there. So,
yeah.
All right, bud. What else on your mind?
We got to talk briefly about what's going on in the Toronto Philly series, because it's a situation a lot of people are focused on, particularly Twitter, because it might explode if it happens, but we got to talk about it.
Okay.
Are they going to blow a 3-0 lead? It's starting to look possible.
I know you're on that narrative. I know you're kind of...
I think it's going to happen.
Looking for that to happen.
I think it's going to happen.
And lay out your logic there behind that thought, sir.
I was extremely concerned. Forget about the Doc Rivers stuff for a second. I was extremely concerned once Embiid ended up getting injured.
Right.
And I was worried because Maxey was looking great in the first couple games. Harden can't move at all. If you watch Harden play, he can't create any separation. He has no lift on his jump shot. There's a serious problem going on with Harden. I'm assuming he's injured. He might need surgery during the offseason. But Tobias Harris has been okay. Maxey was 5 for 14 yesterday. He had a couple of good moments. But for the most part, now I'm going to bring in the Doc Rivers element to it. So the main concern initially was Embiid's injury because he was I'd say a realistic MVP candidate. He's not going to win, but he was that valuable to the team.
Right.
Now you bring in Doc Rivers. How do you no-show a home game in Game 5 after blowing a 3-1 lead last year? How does that happen?
Kind of seems to be a thing, doesn't it?
It's been the case for Rivers' entire career, which is why I think he's the most overrated coach of all time. He's blown 3 separate 3-1 leads. But the aspect of Rivers I want to talk about, I just don't. It's losing to Toronto is one thing. Toronto plays hard. Van Vliet's out. I get it, but they still play good defense. They play hard. How do you not even show up for a home game in Game 5?
Yeah, that was the biggest surprise to me, because that's the advantageous spot right there. You're at home, like you said. You're missing Van Vliet, and they pretty much no-showed that game, Scott. They end up losing by 15.
Yeah, the first quarter was close. On a podcast, I had Raptors first quarter at like plus 160, which got there. Then they scored 14 points in the second quarter. They were down double digits at the half. They cut it to single digits briefly in the third quarter, and I think for part of the fourth quarter. And then the Raptors ended up putting him to bed. I just don't know how you no-show that home game after choking last year.
Yep.
I think it's serious alarm bells, DEFCON 2 right now. If they lose Game 6, it's DEFCON 1.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
DEFCON 2 right now.
Yeah. Super Sly, I think, says what we're all thinking, that if they lose Game 6, they're in a world of trouble. Even though they go back home. But, that Philly crowd, they'll turn on you. They'll turn on you in a heartbeat if things aren't going your way. And that would be a prime spot. If they get off to a slow start there, I believe there is no home court advantage until they get it close,
I guess my argument with the counter is, what is Doc Rivers supposed to do? Because you can blame the coach for not getting the players motivated.
Which you have, apparently.
Yeah. Well, no, I mentioned that for the motivation aspect. But when it comes to the X's and O's, Embiid's definitely feeling the finger issue. We've seen it the last couple of games. He does not look anywhere near as dominant as he did early on in the series.
Right.
Harden can't move. He's shooting about 38% from the floor in the series, so he's almost useless offensively. Still a good facilitator, but shooting-wise, it has not been pretty. Maxi's been a bit of a non-factor. Tobias Harris has been okay. And I guess my question is, if you're Doc Rivers, what adjustments can you make if Embiid's just not going to dominate the way you need him to dominate?
Yeah, you can't. You can't. I
don't know what Rivers is supposed to do.
Yeah, it's like playing chess, and you're down to, your knight and your rook. There just isn't much you can do. Or, I guess in more apt comparison would be you're down to your queen and your rook. And that's it.
Yeah,
you've got no other pieces.
You're missing a huge chess piece. You're down a rook. And I'm also not going to compare Doc Rivers to Magnus Carlsen, but I'm saying if you're a mediocre chess player and you're down a piece, if you're against a confident player, you're probably going to lose with that game about 90% of the time.
Yep. And that's kind of how this is looking. And and props to Nick Nurse there and the Toronto team getting down 3-0. They didn't quit.
Never say die.
No, it was the kind of the exact opposite of what we saw from the Nets. As the Nets went down 3-0, and you knew it was over. You knew there was no comeback on the horizon.
And all of the pressures on Philly. Toronto's just playing with house money.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Looking in the comment section, there seems to be a consensus that the 76ers, I'll put it nicely, I'll put it the non-profane version, they could be in a bit of trouble, Scott.
Yeah, the way that I see it, I think they're going to lose in Toronto. So I do like Toronto. I know they're underdogs right now for Game 6. I think they're going to win. Game 7 it's just a repeat of what happened with Atlanta last year. They're going to show up. You know that they're going to be extremely tight. You know that they're going to be extremely nervous. And if Toronto gets off to another good first quarter start, Philly's going to fold, because we've seen it before.
I would load up on the live plays there. If Philly gets a lead, pound it. If Toronto gets a lead, lay that number.
If you're looking at series prices, I know it's not 50-1 anymore, but Toronto's around plus 600.
Yep.
I think that's a hell of a price.
Yeah, it's better. It's better than you're going to get rolling Toronto twice. Because
what would Philly be favored in Game 7? I got to assume they'd be favored by 4.5.
Maybe.
Maybe
they were favored by
They were favored by 8.5 yesterday. That's not happening again.
Favored by, well, I got 7.5, 7.5, and 4.5.
Okay.
The opening game was 4.5. They win by 20. So then the odds adjusted after that
Yeah.
back to 7.5 or so. So
Philly's going to be favored at home in Game 7.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be in the 4.5 to 5.5 range, I would think.
So if you take the money line version of that, which is probably Toronto plus 200, maybe?
Close, yeah. Yep.
And you parlay that with Toronto basically at even money on an open parlay for Game 6, you're much better off taking the plus 600.
Yep, very good. And usually that's not the case. You're usually going to get a little better price doing the rollover parlay, but because it's just 2 games and you're not getting that massive a price.
If you want to look for a future parlay, I don't mind throwing Raptors series with something.
No.
See what you can do. Turn a little bit of money into potentially a lot of money, but I do think the Raptors will force 7, and I'll take my chances with Philly showing up for a Game 7.
See what we started with the chess talk here? Like Steele checking in said, unless you practice the art of sacrifice and give up your queen on purpose.
That's more the Botez gambit, but I'm not a proponent of that one.
Are you a chess?
If you know who those people
are you a chess geek now?
I follow it. I can't say I'm great at it. I'm fine. I'm like a 1,200, 1,300. I don't really play that much, but yeah, I follow. I think it's entertaining for me.
You just started playing, right?
Yeah, I dabble. I've been playing for probably a couple months.
Okay, very good. Harden and Simmons trade was an exchange of garbage.
Well, that was one point that a lot of Harden fanboy Twitter accounts were making. Are you sure Harden, wasn't the problem or was the problem or whatever? If the Nets still had Harden, they still would have lost the series. Like, what are we talking about? They weren't going to be Boston anyway. Because if you're looking at the situation of the Nets keeping their original roster, then Seth Curry, who had 23 points yesterday, is not on your team. And Harden can't move. He can't guard anybody, and his shooting numbers are atrocious. So even with Harden on that team, they're still losing to Boston.
Yeah, I agree. I
don't think it changes anything.
Yeah, unless for some reason he wouldn't have suffered whatever malady he has, as long as he's got that problem. That ain't changing regardless of what uniform he's got on. Yeah. Peter Will says he loves Toronto. Said my all-time greatest hit. I was on Virginia and the Raptors for plus 8,500 in 2019 when everybody was drunk on Zion. Nice.
Yeah.
That's a good hit. Defense, baby. Harden is washed. Scott, do you believe that's true?
I think he needs massive surgery during the offseason that he's not talking about.
Will he ever be? What percentage of the player he once was? Will he? What's the goal? 90%, 80%?
Realistic goal?
Yeah,
60.
Okay.
I think you're looking at a spot where his legs are completely shot, and he's still a great passer. He still can get to the foul line a lot. But if you want to talk about what his style of play will be, it's going to mimic Chris Paul. He's not going to be able to create much separation. He's going to have to abuse the pick and roll, and he's going to have to average about 11 assists per game. That's what you're looking at. And Chris Paul, we know, is a much better defender. But if you want to talk about Harden's leg issues for the last couple of years, he definitely needs surgery. He actually cannot move out there.
Do we have a final word on Van Vliet yet? I've still got him questionable. Do you have an update on that?
I'm assuming he's done because he ripped his jersey up. It looked like he injured a hamstring. I'm assuming he's probably done. We'll see. There are also some arguments that the Raptors might be better without him. I don't know if I agree or disagree with that, but I will tell you that Toronto uses much more length when Van Vliet's not on the court. And defensively, I think they are a lot better with Van Vliet off the court. It's not Van Vliet's fault that he's 6 feet tall, but They have a lot of length and a lot of size. And from what you can tell from what happened in Game 5, Toronto was the more physical team, and they just completely wore down Philly over those 48 minutes.
Well, when we talked about that yesterday about being absent Van Vliet actually makes Toronto a little better of a defensive squad. So, yeah. No question about it.
And I mentioned this happened. It wasn't a hamstring, sorry. It was a hip issue for Van Vliet. But we'll see what the story is. I'm assuming he might tough it out for Game 7 if they get there. I doubt he'll play Game 6. But I mentioned it when Harden got traded. A huge reason why the Nets traded him was because Harden was a free agent. He was not going to re-sign with Brooklyn. So they got something for him, and whoever picked up the Harden trade would basically be in a line to automatically re-sign him because you gave up a huge all-star caliber player, a couple of role players. If Harden ends up getting this max extension, which he's in line for, it will be the worst contract in the entire league, and it will be year one.
Yeah.
This contract is an albatross. It's not even a ticking time bomb. You set the timer at 1 minute. It's over. The second that you sign this contract and you pay Harden about $50 million a year, your team's championship window is officially shut for the duration of the entire contract.
Yeah, he's making 44 this year, Scott.
It will be the worst contract, arguably, in the history of the sport. And somebody's going to pay it.
Okay. I was.
You think somebody won't pay it?
No, they will, because they'll have the money and they'll spend it. But I agree. I don't know. They'll be the worst history at all time, worst contract all time.
It's going to be up there.
It's going to be up there for sure. Andrew compared him to Kemba. Do you see that? You see that comp?
Comparing who?
Harden.
I'm saying the contract.
No, where they just
the injuries.
No, where they just kind of fell off the cliff.
I think that the only similarity is the debilitating leg issues, but stylistically, at least Harden's still a great passer. He has some value to some degree as a distributor, which Kemba's not exactly known for. Kemba was a shooting guard playing point guard.
You know,
that's realistically what he was.
You know how old Harden is?
Right now, yeah. 30. What is he? 35?
32. See, I was guessing 34, and I just looked it up.
So somebody will definitely pay him that much.
Yeah. I thought he was in the mid-30 range. Because he's been around forever.
It will be a disastrous contract. Imagine this, but like 2-3 years down the road when Harden's crawling, and he might quit on his team.
David Good says only $44 million slave wages. How could you even get out of bed for $44 million, Scott? God.
In this economy, I don't know.
Well, gas is high, so
yeah, it is high.
Avocados have gone up again, so you got to have.
Once again, I'm not going to blame Harden for getting injured. It's not his fault that he played so many minutes over the years that it caught up with him. But I'm being realistic. Somebody's going to pay him a bunch of money because he's James Harden.
Yep. And
he is already a shell of his former self, and it can only get worse from here.
David Good says James Harden is 61. Yep. Said
32 really caught me off guard.
Said he looks 40. Yeah, I agree. I totally agree, bud. That's.
I also don't know how many years he played at Arizona State, though. Because nowadays you can look at the age and it goes, wow, everyone's so young. And it's like, wait a second, this guy's 29. He's been in the league for 10 years?
Yeah.
Because everyone's in college for 1 year. So I think I care more about the actual minutes than I care about how many years you've been in the league. And Harden's played a bunch of minutes.
Well, he was drafted in 2009, so that's 13 years ago. So that would put him at 19. So
that's what I thought. He played 1 year at Arizona State.
Yep.
And it's also about minutes in the regular season. Harden's made the playoffs about every year. So there's been a lot of extra mileage over the years, and his legs appear to have finally broken down.
14 years in the NBA, that's a career. Yeah, absolutely.
He's 32 years old. It's crazy.
Nathan Stern says, I'm 34 and I look way younger. Must be the beard. Yeah, that's it, buddy. Plus, you're not out there banging 2 or 3 times a week, 6 months out of the year against.
So I'm going to ask, though, are you going to bet Toronto plus 600? Because I feel like you kind of have to.
Yeah. Even with Van Vliet gone, that'd be the only thing that would scare me. But they showed they could win the last one without Van Vliet, and
it wasn't even close.
No, it wasn't. The defense did their job, and yeah, I think that's a solid play at plus 600. I don't know how you get away from that.
The only thing that can save the Nets in the media cycle is James Harden losing a 3-0 lead. That's the only thing that can save the Nets in the media cycle.
Yeah, good point. All right, bud. Let's take a look at tonight's games, and before we get rolling and reveal our favorite play of the day. And spoiler alert, we do have a play from one of those games. So let's talk about a couple of the other ones, Scott. Yeah, New Orleans, Phoenix. Phoenix 6.5-point favorites, 214.5 is the number there. Talked about it earlier. I like the way this New Orleans defense is played. They're not a lockdown defense, but they do enough just to frustrate the other team and keep them from doing exactly what they want to. I basically have no confidence in this Phoenix team without Booker. Scott, you?
We have the same exact play of the day.
Okay.
But mine came out first, so take that. I know, we already went through this. Whatever. The point is, we both like New Orleans.
Okay.
This line's disrespectful. I think these teams are even. And from what I've seen in the last couple of games, they are definitely even.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just me. It seems like home court advantage doesn't really matter that much anymore. Did you get that feeling? There's a lot of road wins going around.
Yeah, well, it certainly has been the case in the playoffs for sure that the home court advantage hasn't been as substantial. So now in this one, it's been 2-1 for the home team. So
Okay.
excuse me, no, yeah, 2-1 or 3-1 rather. Sorry, home teams won 3 out of 4. So
No, home teams won 2 out of 4.
wait a minute, game 1.
Pelicans won game 2 and they lost game 3.
Oh, you're right. I was matching them up wrong there on the grid. Sorry.
But the point is that Booker is of course, the most important offensive player on the Suns, because you're looking at Brandon Ingram. The Suns can't guard him. He's averaging 30 points per game in the series with great efficiency. And Booker was your guy who could go toe-to-toe with Ingram and cancel out Ingram's production.
Right.
Now you don't have that. And if you watch Phoenix play, they can still win the series, but every possession is a massive struggle because they don't have many guys that can A, create their own shot, and B, really make a bunch of difficult shots. They just don't have that.
No, and Booker was their 3-point guy, and they don't have anybody. This team is shooting terribly from beyond the arc. In the 3 games without Booker, I think they've shot like 27.5% from downtown.
That is going through the weapons. Who do they have?
Well, right. That's the thing. They don't have anybody that can shoot a 3, Scott. And I don't know who you blame for that. Is that just bad roster makeup at this point?
I can't really blame it on anybody because your best player got hurt. I can't blame a GM or a head coach
for not having more depth.
I mean, they won 67 games.
Okay.
They were the 1 seed and they had the best record in the league by a wide margin. I can't criticize the team for not being able to overcome the absence of a top 20 player in the league who's also their best player. It's just unfortunate. It sucks. But I got to live with the situation, which is that New Orleans is being disrespected.
Yeah.
The series should be a coin flip. They're plus 270 to win the series. This doesn't make any sense.
Yep, I agree. I think that's another good series price. Now that's a situation where you're probably going to be able to play a rollover parlay.
Or if you want to just potentially parlay the Raptors one with the Pelicans one, I don't mind that either. But I think the series is going 7. I don't think Phoenix is winning game 5 and game 6. Do you?
No, I do not. I think this one goes 7, or
I think New Orleans could win tonight,
or the Pelicans take care of it early. Yep.
I think Phoenix will find a way to get it done at home, but this is not going to be pretty.
Ingram over on points.
I like the over at 26.5. He's been walking into 30 every game.
Yep, I agree with that. What's our other one there?
I like the first half under in that game, by the way. I would like the full game under, but these scramble points in the final couple minutes of the Sun series have been a disaster. But the first halves have been disgusting. Yep. I think you'll see a very low-scoring start to this game. Because if you look at how the Suns play, they cannot go quickly. With Booker out of the lineup, just keep an eye on the shot clock every time Phoenix has the ball. There's like 6 seconds on the shot clock every possession.
Yeah, before they really start their offensive set, it goes down well below 10 seconds. Yeah, you're right. Usually in the 6 to 7 second range before they run any kind of a play. So
yeah.
Minnesota, Memphis, Scott.
I ended up losing a play on this series earlier for the last game. I had the Timberwolves team total under, and they shot 50% from 3 and attempted 40 free throws. And you see the numbers. 40 free throw attempts, and they go 18 of 36 from the 3-point line. My question for you is, if your team had those stats, how much do you think your team wins by?
Yeah.
Double digits?
Yeah, I was going to say 12 to 15 minimum.
They won by 1.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
They couldn't keep their foot on their throat on the foot of the Grizzlies. They let them keep coming back, man.
For me, I'm going with the Grizzlies in this one. Even though I recognize that the Grizzlies have looked underwhelming, mostly Ja, who's been awful in this entire series. But Minnesota shot so well from the floor, and they still barely won the game. I'm extremely concerned about Minnesota's awful shot selection and just their stupidity. They turn the ball over a bunch. They make a lot of careless mistakes. They played basically a perfect game in game 4, and they barely won. I think that it makes a lot of sense for law of averages to come back into play where Minnesota suddenly misses a bunch of shots that they made last game. Patrick Beverley went 3 for 4, 4 for 5 from 3. That's not going to happen. He entered the game shooting 17%. Like, that's not going to happen. I'll lean Grizzlies. No chance I'm playing it. No chance at all.
Okay. Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm a lot more sure about the under. I think I think the referees make some adjustments after that disparity in free throws.
I like the team total under for Minnesota.
Yeah, that's a solid play as well. I think either one of those works. So, all right, very good, my friend. Anything else before we get out of here?
Yes. I actually also like the Suns team total under. I believe that was at, I'm trying to remember if it was 110.5 or 109.5. It's too high. I just mentioned how the Suns are so deliberate with their offensive sets. The pace in this game will be non-existent. So I like the team total under there. Also, if you want probably the best value play on the entire board, not for the series prices, but for the actual games tonight, Pelicans third quarter money line. It's plus 134. Explain this to me. The Pelicans plus 134 in the third quarter. They have outscored the Suns by at least 9 points in the third quarter in each of the first 4 games in the series. They are plus 134. They've won the third quarter by 9+ in every game.
Sounds solid.
How does that make sense?
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's one of those inefficiencies that the average bettor isn't going to find because you're not going to go back and look at third quarter numbers. So
give me Pelicans third quarter on principle. I have to play that.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, guys, let's get to it. It is Tuesday. It is that time. Put on your overalls, put on your straw hat, and climb aboard your John Deere. Pull out your lucky keychain. Because once again, kids, you know what time it is. It is time to bet the farm. All right, Scott, not so lucky yesterday, but I know we got something cooked up for today. What do you got, sir?
So I mentioned team totals, and we're going to go back to the game we didn't talk about, between the Hawks and the Heat. We're going to take the Hawks team total under 105.5. Atlanta offensively has been an absolute disaster in the series. The Hawks are averaging just 98.3 points per game up to this point, and they still had the huge outlier at home where they scored 30-something points in the fourth quarter in the one game they won. Main reason why this team has been awful is because the Heat have completely shut down Trae Young, who has been atrocious in this entire series. He's averaging just 16.5 points per game while shooting 35.1% from the floor and 21.2% from three. Disgusting.
Not
just
good.
Absolutely awful. But it also goes back to the fact that Atlanta, with Young struggling, they really don't have much of a supporting cast. They have Bogdanovich, they have a half-injured Collins, and Gallinari. Am I forgetting somebody, or is that basically it?
That's basically it, yeah.
So they don't have many options if Trae Young's going to struggle. On top of that, Miami is one of the slowest teams in the league. Miami ranks 29th in pace. Atlanta ranks 19th. So I expect to see a pretty, I'd say, slow game in the half court. And the under is 5-0 in the last 5 meetings. We expect Miami to put the clamps down at home and the series. Atlanta also might roll over if this game gets ugly early. But as long as you keep Trae Young in check, Atlanta's offense is going to be a mess, and we think Miami keeps Trae Young in check once again.
There you go. All right. So we definitely like the team total under 105.5 for the Atlanta Hawks. That's going to do it for the farm. That's going to do it for the show. We appreciate you guys, as always, stopping by. Don't forget to smash those buttons, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let's go make some money tonight, Scott. You ready?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
All right. You guys have a great day. As always, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to check us out tomorrow, same time, 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central. Scott and I will do our very best to help you in that never-ending journey to head back to the window. Take care, everybody. We'll see you then.